What is up, guys, and welcome to episode 31 of QnA. Yes, we have done 31 of these. I've been doing this for a little while now. But this is the show where I take your questions from the YouTube comment page and from Twitter, and I answer them here on video form. And we're going to jump right into it this week. We got a lot of questions to tackle, so let's do it. First question comes from Kevin Durant's burner account, and he says, with the Ravens having a difficult stretch coming up and the Browns having an easier stretch, do you think they could come even by the end of November? Come even? Probably not. But gain some ground, yes. Hey, look, I think the Browns, for the whole month of November, I don't think they should worry about scoreboard watching or what the Ravens are doing. The Browns just need to focus on the Browns, and they just need to focus on getting out of November undefeated, because they're going to have to go undefeated this month if they want a shot at winning this division, or if they want a shot at making the wild card. They're going to have to go undefeated in the month of November. So while I don't think they're going to have the division tied up by the December 1st, I think, if the Browns go undefeated in November and win the games they're supposed to win in December, then things will handle themselves out. Next question comes from Stuart Anderson, who says, now that the trade deadline is over, do you think that the Browns will wait and see if any offensive line players get waived by their current team, or will we wing it for the rest of the year and try our luck in the draft? Hey, I think the line's the line. I think they just got to settle in on whoever's playing is who's playing, get some consistency there, and just see what happens, because there's not a better solution on the horizon. There's not a better solution on the waiver wire. They just got to roll those dudes out there, and Baker has to play better regardless of if his offensive line play is better. Baker Mayfield's the number one overall pick. Number one overall picks, they got to overcome adversity sometimes, and if the offensive line is a problem, Baker's got to be a baller. Baker's got to make plays. We can't have all these excuses for Baker in the second half of the season if we hope to do anything. And as far as replacing the left tackle, I would hope they would draft somebody in the first round next year. But, with John Dorsey, he might swing a trade in the offseason. You never know with John Dorsey. So I don't want to set anything in stone right now. Next question comes from Scuba, who says, do you think the Browns will draft the offensive lineman with their first pick, or in the draft or acquire one in free agency? I feel like John Dorsey's either going to draft somebody if there were. I don't know what the left tackle class is looking like this year in the draft. But I just feel like John Dorsey's probably going to trade for somebody in the offseason, and that's where he's going to make his move. I just don't know if he signs a free agent outright to play that, because it's going to be expensive. You're going to have a lot of contracts coming up the year after, so I don't think you have a lot of room for expensive free agents. So I think this is going to involve John Dorsey getting creative, probably either trading for a starter or drafting a starter in the draft. Next question is from Hanson's Rough Riders, who says, do you think Freddie Kitchens will able to pound the do-your-job mentality into the team's head before it's too late? It seems if they adopt this, the sky's the limit. Yes, the Browns get out of their own way, sky's the limit. Now, here's the thing about the schedule coming up. Yes, it's weaker teams. And I think a lot of people hear weaker teams and think, oh, well, the Browns, they're not going to get better. They're just going to look better because they're playing weaker teams. But I think with the issues that the Browns have, playing weaker teams is a way to build confidence and is a way to iron out some of these flaws they have without every single flaw being catastrophic to winning or losing the game. When you have some margin of error, you learn better generally. If you make a mistake and the game's over, you don't really learn much. You just learn to be scared. So the Browns being able to play teams where, hey, they can make a mistake or two, learn from it, come back from it, it's going to make them a much better team, and it's going to help them reach their potential, so that when they do play a good team, like the Steelers in Pittsburgh, or like the Ravens in Week 16, or even the Bills, they're able to overcome these things and have these things happen less frequently because they're more confident and they've been able to learn better from these mistakes than they have in the first half of the season. Again, had the second strongest schedule, played the two best defenses in this decade on the road in the first half of this schedule. Not a lot of margin for error in this schedule. The Browns have played so many top 5 defenses. There has not been room for growing pains. There has not been room for error. There finally will start to be room for error, at least after the Bills and the Broncos, because those are still two very good defenses, but there will be some room for error on offense. There will be some room for error on defense. There will be some room for learning and growth is what this team needs, because they're still a young team. They still need to grow, and they still need to learn how to finish games like a top-tier NFL team would. So I think this stretch is going to be really good for the Browns, and I think that it can go a long way in adopting that do-your-job mantra that, Freddie and Baker have been spewing all season. Next question comes from Alan at Dalton World, who says, do you think this team would have a better record right now if they never traded for Odell and we still had Zeitler and Peppers? No, not at all. Quiet as kept, right guard has not been the problem all season. Right guard has caused a few problems, but right guard ain't cost the Browns a single game this season. So no, I don't think Zeitler makes as big as a difference as some people think it would. I really don't. I think that difference is overblown. Right guard has not killed the Browns. And then as far as Jabril Peppers as safety, oh no. I don't think he really makes that much of a difference. Look, the Browns' record with or without that trade for Odell Beckham is 2-5. And that is a statement on how bad Odell has played, but that's also a statement on what this team's issues are. And they aren't, singular. It isn't just one player. There are large scale issues with this team when it comes to just a functional level. They can't get out of their own way. And I don't think that's due to one player specifically. I think that's due to a bunch of different factors all going on at once, all not having a lot of margin of error, all not being able to learn properly from these things. So hopefully they could start to get these things together, smooth out, and get out their own way so they could win some games. Next question comes from Zane Longer, who says, what are your thoughts on McCrae, Jordan McCrae, the new left tackle? I think the offensive defensive line dominated in the Pats game. The miscues are doing us in. I wouldn't say dominated. The offensive line was up and down, but they were a better kind of up and down. The lows weren't much lower the lows were a little bit higher and the highs were higher. They had much better protection when they were able to get in the right protections. But, Jordan McCrae being out there in left tackle for the first time, he did make a few big mistakes. But yeah, overall, he played well. That bodes well for the future. Defensive line, I think, still has to work on making more of an impact. A lot of times I saw the Browns go into a cover 4 all-out blitz, and they just didn't get there. And they got to get there on those third downs. Myles Garrett has to make more of an impact. Well, not Myles Garrett because he has 10 sacks, but Olivier Vernon has to get there. Larry Ogunjobi has to show up. Sheldon Richardson has to show up. Those 3 guys have to show up a lot more in order for the Browns to get to where they need to. But yeah, I would say the offensive line play was encouraging while it was still up and down last week. The next question comes from Ethan Clark, who says, do you think Baker can return to last season's form in the second half of the season? I think he showed signs, honestly, in the last 2 games of getting back to that form. In Seattle, he was able to move the ball well, still had those interceptions, those very costly interceptions, and it cost the Browns the game. And then against New England, I felt like he moved the ball well. I thought he was doing some really good things with the coverages. I felt like he wasn't overwhelmed with what he had to do in the diagnosing the defenses against the New England Patriots. I felt like he had a solid game. And I feel like that bodes well for how he's going to play against these next 2 teams, the Denver Broncos and the Buffalo Bills, who, again, their defense is no joke. I think that Baker's on the path to playing a lot better and figuring out these things that defensive coordinators have done to him to confuse him early on in the season and starting to be able to conquer that. I really feel like he's making steps. I really feel like he's going to have a good second half of the season. Next question comes from the caster who says, if the Browns were to make coaching changes, do you think Monken or Wilks would be gone or Freddie would be gone? Also, who are some potential replacements? I don't know any potential replacements, but if the Browns did remove somebody, I would guess it would be Monken. Steve Wilks, really no reason for him to go. Freddie Kitchens, John Dorsey hired him, so firing him would be kind of a black mark on John Dorsey. And since that's the guy in charge of that decision, I don't think he'll voluntarily give himself a black mark. But it is going to be very interesting to see who they would bring in as an offensive coordinator. Is it going to be somebody with a lot of head coaching experience? Because I think that's the thing this coaching staff is missing the most, is real experience at the head coach position. And I think that's one thing that has cost the Browns a good amount of games this season. So that's what I think is going to happen if it comes down to it. And, as far as replacing Todd Monken, I think it's going to be a veteran coach, somebody who has a lot of NFL experience. The next question comes from Giants Nation, who says, what's up, Quincy? Hope you don't skip over this fire question. No, I did not. But my question is, what do you think about the Baker is a bust take? I'm an Oklahoma fan, but his production isn't good and his play is concerning. Watched your videos, but do you think it's in his head, or is this what he really is? See, it's the problem that I have with how we talk about players. How in the world did Baker Mayfield go from somebody who could have been one of the better young quarterbacks in the league, somebody who broke the rookie touchdown record, to all of a sudden, after a down first half of his second season, a bust? Really? And it just makes me question, if we did this with every second-year quarterback who had a bad year, we would have called Brett Favre a bust, a major bust. We would have called Drew Brees a major bust. We would have called Peyton Manning a major bust. We wouldn't have been sure about Tom Brady. Was he a game manager? You know what I mean? We got to let quarterbacks grow. And we have to trust that Baker Mayfield did not break the rookie touchdown record by accident. And to those who say, well, he did it against bad teams, a lot of people who get drafted very early in the draft play a lot of bad teams, and not a lot of quarterbacks broke that record. So that excuse is invalid. Baker Mayfield did special things in his first year, and that's because he's a special player. He still makes special throws. He still has a ton of talent and ton of potential and ton of growth to go. And, you got to let him go through the rough patches without just outright calling him a bust. So I think the Baker is a bust narrative is just ridiculous, laughable, and it just shows how short of a memory and short of an attention span sometimes we in the media can have. The next question comes from Ryan McGraw, who says, have you heard of any head coaching methods used to better manage penalties on an undisciplined team? Chris Carter calls our team a bunch of misfits, aka selfish players. While I could agree about that in regards to OBJ, I wonder what Kitchens could do from this point forward. I don't get the shade at OBJ there, though, man. What has OBJ done that's been selfish, honestly? He's actually been one of the least selfish players on this team, honestly. He has not made a lot of stuff about him. I mean, the stuff that's been about him has not been stuff he's saying. It's just stuff that he did. It's not really selfishness. I don't think there's really an argument to say that OBJ is over. I just don't get the shade there at OBJ. But as far as discipline goes with this team, yeah, it's a problem, and it's probably just the head coach. It comes from there. That the penalties are a coaching thing, and they get fixed with discipline. And I think that this team lacks some discipline because they're very emotional. And I think that comes from the leadership from the top down. Freddie Kitchens is an emotional guy. He's a passionate guy. Baker Mayfield is an emotional guy. He's a passionate guy. And when you have an emotional / passionate teams, they are primed for a couple of things. They can either play really well and lights out in some very, very bright spots, and they can also implode. They can also cause a lot of penalties, and it can go the wrong way. And I think that's just the thing that we have here is we have a team that is riding on emotions just a little bit too much, and they need to rein it in. And I'm confident that they will be able to rein it in a little bit. I mean, they kind of conquered the penalties for a little bit. The New England game had a bunch of penalties, but it was a rain game. You're playing New England. I wouldn't be surprised if that's more of an aberration than anything. But I really don't jive with the narrative that the penalties have been the problem with the Cleveland Browns this year. I don't think the penalties have cost the Browns more than the one game against Tennessee. The problem with the Browns is the turnovers. That's the issue with the Browns. The turnovers have killed the Browns, not the penalties. So that's where I am with that whole narrative. Next question comes from William Sweeney, who says, say the Browns missed the playoffs by a game or two. Any chance that we could retain Kitchens as a coordinator instead of hiring him as an experience? Yeah. I just don't see this. I'm just be real with you. There's no way you can fire him as a head coach and keep him as the offensive coordinator. That ship has sailed. Either you're going to keep Freddie Kitchens as your head coach or you're going to clean house. Those are the two options. There's really no room to get cute here. And honestly, if you do, it's going to be a disaster. That's a culture problem waiting to happen, in my opinion, if that's what they decide to do. But those are my responses to the questions that you guys asked. Again, thank you guys for asking so many questions. But that is it for this week's Q&A. And if you like what I do here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload. And if you want to help the show out or support it, join the Patreon, have your name added to the bottom of the ticker bar, or buy a shirt. Either way is greatly appreciated. But thank you for watching. Have a great day. Have a good night.